Right now, Steve Simpson is with us. He is a senior attorney with the Institute for Justice. IJ.org is the website, a libertarian public interest law firm, and standing up in favor, defending the Citizens United ruling that says that corporations hire people, and not that money is speech, that the money facilitates speech. Steve, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me, Tom.
Thanks for joining us. I'm sorry you didn't have the resources to come in by Skype. No, I'm serious. It would be great for our viewers to see you as well as
well, we might be able to do that at some point in the future. But,
okay, great. Why, 3 years ago, before a year before Citizens United, the majority of Americans thought that our campaign finance laws were screwed up, and in fact, the majority of Americans were opposed for a variety of reasons. Some on the kind of, there needs to be more. Some on the there needs to be less. But there was a majority opposed to McCain-Feingold specifically. Now we have a majority opposed to Citizens United, and I'm not suggesting that we should have government by polling or anything like that. But although you could argue that that's what elections are, but why? How can you possibly defend a Supreme Court ruling that says that? Well, here's the phrase that you said. Congress has. This is from a quote from you in your brief to Congress. You said Congress has no more power to ban speech by American corporations than it does to ban speech from any American. Now, a corporation isn't a person. A corporation is a legal fiction that is created when you go to the Secretary of State's office and say, I want to have special tax advantages.
Well, not quite. A corporation is a legal entity that's created by people.
Not necessarily. It can be created by a person.
Well, that's true. But just let me address some of your points here. First, corporations are made up of people. That's why corporations have to have the same rights in
but they are not.
respects. They absolutely are.
They are not. The corporate form it exists as a figment of law. As John Marshall pointed out back in 1816, the third Supreme Court Justice of the United States, that and it was quoted in the dissent in Citizens United, as you well know. It is a figment of law. It is a corporation. You could have a group of people getting together, and you can call it anything you want, but if you're going to uniquely call it a corporation, it has to have a particular type of legal imprint established by a particular state or by an act of Congress.
Well, that's true, but Marshall, in that opinion, recognized the reason we have corporations is because it makes everybody's life better. It allows people to organize their affairs in a much more efficient way than they could without corporations. We have all sorts of entities in the law.
He also said they were soulless.
We have all sorts of entities in the law that aren't strictly speaking persons. Among them, government, by the way, and nobody claims that government has no legitimate right to function because it's not, quote, persons.
We're not talking about functioning. We're talking about free speech, and there are a lot of constraints on free speech within government.
That's true, but the Supreme Court has recognized that the government has the right to speak, as it absolutely has to if it's going to have the right to act. But ultimately, the reason to protect...
There is no... When did the Supreme Court say the government?
The government has a right to speak?
There is no the government.
No, that's absolutely right. This was a case. There are a number of cases in which the Supreme Court has held that the government, when it's talking about government affairs, has the right to speak, and every taxpayer doesn't have the right to tell it that because you're spending my money, you can't speak anymore. But
the specific agencies or individuals within the government.
Yeah, of course. I mean, but
that's my point. Is that an individual within a corporation has a right to speak, but the corporation itself doesn't.
On behalf of the corporation, just like the government has the right to speak on behalf of the government. It could be in no other way. But in any event, getting back to...
But the president can't speak on behalf of the government.
That's not true.
No, he can only speak on behalf of the executive branch. He can't speak on behalf of the Supreme Court. He can't speak on behalf of Congress.
But the Supreme Court can speak on behalf of the Supreme Court. I mean, again, you're talking about entities within the government, and I think overcomplicating the basic point, which is that if individuals have the right to freedom of speech, they have to have the right to organize themselves into groups, and those groups then can speak for the individual.
That is called the freedom of association. The freedom of association and the freedom of speech are both the First Amendment, as you know, but they are not the same thing.
Well, That's true, but they're logical corollaries of one another, and that's exactly where the right of association comes from.
Arguably not. I mean, the right to associate, is, I mean, that back in the day when that First Amendment was written, the right to associate was associated with the right to conspire to bring down the government of Great Britain.
Well, not quite.
Or to kick out the government of Great Britain.
Not really. I mean, it was actually, it's written in the First Amendment as the right to assembly and the right to petition, which the court in the 1950s, in a case on behalf of the NAACP, held that there's a right of association and that individuals obviously have to be able to get together in cooperative enterprises. Now, I'd be surprised if a majority of Americans opposed that, yet that is precisely what's at the heart of Citizens United. I mean,
no, you're misreading it, Steve, and you know this. You're an attorney. It says it says that the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances.
Yeah, that's
the right of assembly.
No, that's a serial and. That comes at the end of the amendment, and there are a number of different rights. So it's all of these are separate rights, and they're protected under this amendment. I don't think that's
okay.
Really...
You're right. I won't disagree with that. But in any case, my point is that the right peaceably to assemble.
Sure.
Doesn't mean that a corporation is a person.
That in it, no. And look, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that the assembly and petition prongs of the First Amendment were originally intended to.
But that's the argument you made before the Supreme Court.
No. The argument we're making is that the court has recognized a right of association, which is inherent in the First Amendment, and that has to apply to corporations just like any other group. But that's something that you don't really need. I don't think you need assembly and petition to get there. All you need is a protection for free speech, because if individuals have the right to choose to speak alone, they have to have the right to join with other people, any type of other group, whether it's a partnership, a marriage, a community organization, the Boy Scouts, the Girl Scouts, a radio program, anything. I mean, and if we didn't protect this right, we wouldn't have rights to freedom of the press these days for media corporations or any other group, from the smallest neighborhood group up to the largest corporation.
The press is specifically protected in the First Amendment. Corporations are not.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that part.
The press is specifically protected in the First Amendment. In fact, it's the only industry that is mentioned in the press and the post office are the only two businesses that are mentioned in the entire Constitution.
Yeah, but if you want to attack this from the original meaning, freedom of the press just meant a person with a printing press. It didn't apply to groups of people or any specific entity.
There were companies at the time printing newspapers.
Okay, and how does I don't see how that supports your argument.
Well, they were specifically protected. If the framers meant that any association of people had an absolute freedom of speech, then they wouldn't say, and this one group in particular, the press, has a unique right.
No, you're reading that into the amendment, Tom. That's not what they said. They said freedom of the press. That means freedom of the printing press. It doesn't say anything about who is the entity operating the printing press.
Okay, so what do we lose? We have less than a minute, Steve. I'm sorry. What do we lose if we say to corporations, sorry, you can't speak as a corporation?
We lose the right of individuals to band together and speak effectively in any way that they want.
But the purpose of a corporation isn't to speak; it's to make money.
That's the purpose of some corporations, but in the context of making money, there's absolutely no good grounds to tell somebody that's making money that they're not allowed to speak, any more than it would be to say to the New York Times, your purpose here is profit, therefore you're not allowed to speak anymore. That would be insane.
Yeah, well, I'm in favor of the insane then. Steve Simpson, ij.org, the website. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Tom.
Good talking.